Getting set up over here. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Peah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph. We're going to be learning today Daf Gimel. We're going to start on Daf Gimel all the way on the top of the Amid, when the Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah Hare'oyin. And as we spoke out when we learned the Mishnah, that really there are two mitzvahs connected to the Iyah. One is Pashat appearing in the Beis HaMikdash on all of the 3 Yomim Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. And number two, that when we appear, right, V'lo yerou panai reika, we should not appear empty-handed. We have to bring actually not one, but 2 karbanis. One of them is called oilas re'iyah, right? It's a carbon that's completely burnt on the Mizbeach. And we also have to bring what is called Shalmei Chagiga. Shalmei Chagiga is, since there's a mitzvah to be v'samachta b'chagecha, and ein simcha ela b'basar u'b'yayin, and we're speaking about ideally the basar of karbanos. So we bring a carbon chagiga, which is a shlamim, unlike the oil, which is completely consumed on the mizbeach. No one eats of it. The shalmei chagiga not only is a part of it given to the kehanim, but there is a part, a substantial part, that's given to its owners, through which they fulfill the mitzvah of simchas yom. Now, we have an oral tradition that from these 2 karbanos, oilas re'iyah and shalmei chagiga, one of them must have at least the value of 1 silver ma'ah, and the other of these 2 must have at least the value of 2 silver ma'ah. Regarding 1 and 2, which one has to have 1, which one has to have 2, that in itself is a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that the oila has to have the value of at least 2, and the chagiga has to only have the value of at least 1. And Beis Hillel, and we paskin like Beis Hillel, says the opposite. Oilas re'iyah has to be at least the value of 1 silver ma'ah, and the shalmei chagiga 2. And the key will be in today's daf that there is perhaps, and that you can underline, perhaps there is a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and between his teacher Rabbi Hoshaya, whether this din, let's go with Beis Hillel, Re'iyah 1, Chagiga 2, is that a din that comes from the Oibishter? Is this a halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai? Or is it a rabbinic rule? And the big nafkamina will be that if, this is the if, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shaya argue regarding it, if we're going to learn that Rabbi Shaya learns that midoiraisa there is no minimum shear, then when our Mishnah says hara'onyan, that's what we're getting to. Just like when the Mishnah said peya, even though we learned that peya midrabanan has a minimum amount, 1/60th and not less. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says that peya doesn't have a shear and doesn't have even a minimum shear, because the Mishnah is speaking about on a biblical level. If the dinim, that the value of the karbanos, 1 ma'ah, 2 ma'ah, is only midrabanan, then when the Mishnah speaks about hara'oyin, it is not only referring to the Mishnah of appearing, that's for sure, because there is no minimum amount that you have to appear. You can appear just 1 moment, and you can come in and out every day as many times as you want. And every time you do it, you get a greater mitzvah. Not only will Ra'ayin refer to the mitzvah of appearing, but if the value, the minimum value is only midrabanan, then Ra'ayin can also refer to the carbon, because you can bring the minimum, the least valuable carbon, and then you can bring the most expensive carbon. Ra'ayin won't have a shear as well. If even halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai, you have to have the 1 ma, 2 ma, then Ra'ayin can only be referring to appearing, and it cannot be referring to coming with a carbon. The final topic that we're going to learn today is the following. This is very important. There is a rule that kol davar shebachayva ein ba element achulin. So when a person has to bring a carbon, which is obligatory, they may not use funds other than chulin funds and not meiser sheni money. No, every year it had Meiser Sheni money. First, second year, and then in the fourth and the fifth year of the 7-year cycle, after Truma Gedola, after Meiser Rishon, during those 4 years, which is the Roiv of the 7 years, you have to separate produce as Meiser Sheni, and as the Torah writes explicitly, that the and you have the option of redeeming your Meiser Sheni money by adding a fifth onto money. That money has to be taken to Yerushalmi. It belongs to you. It belongs to you, but that money may only be used for food, drink, and things that you anoint on yourself, which is like drink. Now, people classically would use Meiser Sheni money to buy a carbon shlamim, because why not? Why not? You have to eat, you have to use it for food. Might as well bring a carbon. What shlamim may you use by Medvaram Amurim? That it's a voluntary shlamim. It's a donation shlamim. Now we're speaking about the Shalmei Chagiga. This is an obligatory carbon. So we have the rule number 1. You are not allowed for the Shalmei Chagiga. You can't use not even Meiser Sheni money. Because of this rule, you're chayiv to bring it. Kol davar shabachayva einam ba ela minachol. However, what happens now that we established this rule? Let's go with Beis Hillel, which we paskin, that the Shalmei Chagiga has to have the value of at least 2 ma'ah. And you know what? Sometimes you can buy a little shepsela, you can buy a little animal for 2 ma'ah. What happens if you are buying a much larger animal? What happens if you're buying more than one animal? You're going to be spending more for Shalmei Chagiga. Everyone holds that if you are going beyond the minimum, you are allowed to mix chulin money. Chulin, and take out the word money. You can mix chulin with Meiser Sheni, as long as you're getting your minimum from chulin. You can add even from Meiser Sheni. The application of this rule, what do we mean by adding, is a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. And that will be very important. As we'll explain, we're not going to speak it out right now, but we'll explain it when we get in there in the Gemara. All the way in the top of the Amid, which is the third, right? Peya, Pikurin, Hara'ayin, the third item mentioned in the Mishnah that doesn't have a minimum and it doesn't have a maximum share, says the Gemara, that Masnisa, our Mishnah, and we're going to go with the brackets, that is speaking about B're'iyas Panim, speaking about the mitzvah of Ra'ayin as far as the mitzvah of appearing is concerned. Indeed, no one debates that. If you appear even only once, and not only once, for the minimum amount of time, you did the mitzvah, there's no minimum share. And on the other hand, like we just ended up yesterday, if you stay there longer, and if you come and go, you're being machabed the oibishter more, you're doing a greater mitzvah. That for sure is included in the mitzvah, in the Mishnah's Ra'ayah. However, says the Gemara, as a fact in the beginning, B're'iyas, Karbin, that's how we're going to learn the Girsa. As far as the other detail, which is that when you come up, when you appear, and as we mentioned, Oyla, Chagiga, Yesh Lashir. Amazing concept, guys. Yesh Lashir doesn't mean you have to bring more than one carbon. Even though you get to bring only one for each, so you can say that's called no minimum share, like only appearing once. The fact, as we're going to say in a moment, and this statement the Gemara is going to link with Rabbi Yochanan, that clearly states that Beis Hillel, that the 1 ma by the oila and the 2 ma by the chagiga is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. If I have to bring only one, but it has to have a minimum value, that's called a share. Share isn't only in kamus. Share is in echos. I'm going to use the word echos because minimum value means it has to be epsa. That's called echos. It has to be a value. So that's already called a share. You can't say only one. If only one has to have X amount of value and not less, that's also called a share. So in other words, aval b'riyas carbon, since there is a share, therefore the Mishnah is not referring to it. Beautiful. Look inside the Rash. Maybe today we'll learn a bit more Rash Elios. So we can read the whole thing. We have time. It's a small daf in the Gemara. So masnisim b'riyaspanim v'chulei, all the way from the beginning. Masnisim diktani, there are oyon ein lo shir. Umashma, as we keep on learning, ein lo shir means loy lamayla and not even lamata. Hainu riyaspan. And the pasuk of riyaspanim is yera'eh kol zechurcha. Another detail, guys, yera'eh kol zechurcha is only for the males. The bahahu hu da amrinan that im loy nisra ba'azara beregel el pamachas. Take out the parentheses. The key mitzvah say. And on the other hand, v'chein im nisra nami harbe pa'amim yesh biyadei mitzvah for each and every time. However, avol b'riyas carbon the mechayiv lohavi b'shas riyasei carbon the amar krav lo yiro panerekam and v'kaim alon that the bechol. Now, why he writes it here? The chol davar shebechayve eina ba'el menachulin. He's writing it over here, guys, because that will be at the end of today's daf. We just spoke it out on the intro. You'll see soon why this is negeya. Yay, shloi shir. Now, what shir? You can buy the most expensive animal in the world, and you'll get a bigger mitzvah. Yay, shloi shir means lamato. There is a minimum amount. Let's keep on reading the Rashidil. You have a hainu kedektan, the pedekama, the chagiga. This is in Bavli that Beis Hillel are the ones I quote Beishame when we don't paskin like them that. The Hore'iyah means oilas re'iyah is a ma kesef, and the chagiga, shalmei chagiga, has to have at least 2 kesef. The oilas re'iyah b'ma kesef shal chulin sagya, av shalmei chagiga. Since that's the logic behind Beis Hillel, because everyone holds bein Beishamai, bein Beis Hillel, whether it is halacha l'moshe mesinai ken Rabbi Yechon, whether it is like midrabanan, like Rab Hoishai, it doesn't matter. It wasn't clear which one is which. So why did Beis Hillel hold that the 2 should be for the Shalmei Chagiga? Because the Achilos and Lahediyat. Shtei mois kesef the chulamin. In other words, that which is eaten, it has to be bigger. You burn it, and you give it to people to eat. You need more of it to do both. Okay. Okay, alles gut and fine. Now says the Gemara, I want you to know that this statement of the Gemara, which was a fact, that our Mishnah is not speaking about Re'iyas Korban. Because Re'iyas Korban Yesh Lashir, just like by Peya, even though midrabanan there is a minimum share of 1/60th and not less, it didn't bother us for the Mishnah to enumerate Elu Dvarim She'elam Shir HaPeya because Midoiraisa there is no under limit. So the fact that the Gemara is saying that the Mishnah is not referring to the Iyas Korban, it must mean that this shear of 1 ma'ah or 2 ma'ah, oila, chagiga, is on a biblical level, which would be a halacha l'moshe misinai. Indeed, va'as yakai. This comes out like the Amar, like the one, the Mar Rabbi Yechanan that holds that ma'a kesef, ma'a means oilas re'iyah, and shtei kesef, which goes to the chagiga. Just parenthetically, guys, the 2 kesef and the ma is the same currency. You have different coinages. There's a certain coin that's already called a ma'a. So for some reason, instead of saying kesef, 1 kesef and 2 kesef, they don't say 1 kesef and 2 kesef. They don't say 1 ma and 2 ma, but that's what they mean. There's a reason for it, but that's what they mean. So the 1 for the minimum of the year, and the 2 kesef, which means the 2 ma, which is a silver currency. The prutas are copper, but the ma is already silver. That is dvar Torah, which dvar Torah means halacha l'moshe misinai. The Var Torah, look inside the Rashidilio, 5 lines before the bottom of the first right-hand column. Rabbi Yochanan l'tamei. Not everyone agrees to it, as we'll see in a moment. That's Rabbi Yochanan. That holds, as we have in Pedekama de Eruvin and in Pedekama de Sukkah, that all of the shiurim, not only the shir. When you learn, the Gemara is going to enumerate how much of a kizayis min ameis is matame. How much of the maize is matame, a kizayis, v'chulei. All of that, shiurim is halacha l'moshe misinai. Laha'ir, that the Rambam in his Hagdama L'Peresh HaMishnayos, when he speaks about the Messiah of the Torah, and on the top of everything he puts halacha l'moshe misinai, the Rambam holds that by halacha l'moshe misinai we don't have a machlokes. The Rambam writes that. Then the Rambam writes the second category is not halacha l'moshe misinai, but perushim that we have from Moshe Rabbeinu. He gives an example from this week's Parshas Mishpatim. We're learning this at the end of Shvat Tov Shem Pei Daled, where it says Ayin Tachasayin, right? That was yesterday's Chitas or 2 days ago. Ayin Tachasayin. So Ayin Tachasayin, that it doesn't mean literally. Hashem said it. That's a perush that we have from Moshe Misinai. In these 2 categories that Rambam writes, there are no machlokes. And the challenge will be, just for example, over here, we're going to go with Rabbi Yechanan. That the din of ma'a kesef and the 2 kesef, ma'a and the 2 kesef is halacha l'moshe misinai. And we have a machlokes, Beishamai and Beis Hillel, which one is for which? That is called a machlokes. This is not the only kasha on the Rambam, but let's just to be aware of this topic. Now, so you have to know who's writing it. Very good, David. Notice when we're learning the Rambam writes Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. He writes something that comes from a perush from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rambam will call both of them the Oiraisa. Something that's learned by Yud Gimel Midos, including Zera Shava, the Rambam sometimes calls Divrei Soifrim, the Rambam, even though that's also what we would call a Doiraisa. Right? We learned the Rambam. That's the famous kasha. The most known is that Rambam writes that Kedusha Kesav is Midivrei Soifrim. Kedusha Kesav is not Midivrei Soifrim. If it's to be understood as a derabana, doesn't mean that. Divrei Soifrim of the Rambam many times refers something that's from the Oivishter. Something that's learned from the Yud Gimel Midos, Ein Adam Dam Gzeira Shava, can't make up your own Gzeira Shavas. You can only have it if you have it from Moshe, from Sinai. So the Kesef, right, from Lekicha, right, from Stei Ephraim, that is something that we have from the Oivishter. Since it's learned through the Yud Gimel Midos, the Rambam calls it Divrei Soifrim, even though it's a Doiraisa. So that's in other words, I'm not answering your question, just to be aware that different Rishonim use the word Doiraisa for different things. And the same thing, Divrei Soifrim, it doesn't always mean what you think it means. But coming back over here, our Mishnah, the Gemara is saying, that made a statement that Ra'oyin is not referring to the Iyas Karben, is going according to Rabbi Yechon. Now, who disagrees with Rabbi Yechon? So the Gemara says, however, Tana Rabbi Yasa, going to Rabbi Yechonon, guys, Rabbi Yasa is an Amoyra. But these Amoyroim had certain braises that were not known to everyone. This Rabbi Yasa had, from his tradition, a braisa, and he shared it with Rabbi Yechonon. And here are the words of the braisa, that Re'iyah, which means the Karban Oilas Re'iyah, is Kol Shehu. And by the way, he doesn't only mean the Karban Oilas Re'iyah. It also means the Karban Yerushalmi Chagiga. No, it's Midai Raisa, Devar Torah, there is no minimum share. It's only the Chachamim were the ones that said Ma'a Kesef and Shtei Kesef. Not like Rabbi Yechonon that says Ma'a Kesef and Shtei Kesef Devar Torah. In other words, according to Rabbi Yasa, according to the Braisa taught by Rabbi Yasa, our Mishnah that says Ra'oyan is also going to be speaking about the Iyas Karben, because Midai Raisa, there is not only not a maximum, there's also not a minimum. Finished. Now, Rabbi Yechonon made a comment. The Gemara initially thought that his comment, his challenge was against Rabbi Yasa, but we're going to correct that. But what did he say? Amalei. Again, the understanding initially was that Rabbi Yechonon said it, B'negeya de Braisa that Rabbi Yasa taught. The Yesh, Kain, Zoi? Is there such a thing? What do you mean? You are telling me that Midai Raisa there's no minimum share, and the Chachamim go ahead and they put a share? Look inside that Asher Ilio. You hear the question, you say, what are you talking about? What's the problem with that? The Yesh, Kain, Zu? The Yesh, Kain, Ba'alma, Ke'ein, Zusha, Marta. Do you find this in any other place? That what? That the Eibishter says, you fulfill the mitzvah with no matter how little. And the Chachamim go ahead and they put a shear? All Rabbi Yechonon holds there is no such a thing as a shear. Shear would imply that if you have less than the shear, you didn't do it good. No, we don't have such a thing. It's all of the shiurim, like we just quoted before, that Asher Ilyo quoted Rabbi Yechonon, as we have in the Avdalad and Erevin and Daf Hey and Sukkah, that halacha l'Moshe Messinai. Now, just because Rabbi Yechonon holds that all of the shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Messinai, but for him to say these words on Rabbi Yasa, do you find any other such precedent? That the Gemara right away pushes back. Amar Rabbi Yoina, I don't understand. Okay, I get it. You hold that all of the shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Messinai, but not everyone holds like that. So if you don't hold like that, everyone agrees that after the Chachamim came, we have many shiurim. For example, like you have to have a minimum kazayis min ameis, or kazayis min anavela, or chadosha min asheretz. All these things are dinim b'negeya, how tuma is imparted. And look inside, let's read inside of Pnei Moshe, that like 11 lines from the top, in the middle of the column. What's Rabbi Yechonon bothered with Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Yasa? Meaning, David, look at your words. How do we have the shiurim? We have them through the Chachamim. Now again, I get it. Rabbi Yochanan holds that when the Chachamim gave the shiurim, they did not make it up. Okay, that's fine. But not everyone has to agree with Rabbi Yochanan. And if it's not a halacha l'meishem Sinai, there's nothing wrong for the Chachamim. The Torah doesn't give a share, and the Chachamim gave a share. So how can you challenge Rabbi Yasa by saying v'chi yesh zu? Yeah. By very good example, Truma. Truma midoraisa, the minimum amount patters the whole, and the Chachamim said you have to give a 2% average for the Beinoni. In other words, it didn't make sense for him to challenge him that way. And that's a good statement of Truma, because even according to Rabbi Yochanan, the whole Shiurim Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, Rabbi Yochanan is moided that by Truma, there is no minimum share. Okay. And because of this, the Gemara Pashit tells us, it's amazing that Rabbi Yochanan was the one that put it together, but they want us to know the back and forth, because there's something to learn from the back and forth. Answers the Gemara, clarifies the Gemara, Loi Asya Mishoel Elok Hadad Tani Rab Hoishai. That the kasha that Rabbi Yochanan had was not directed against Rabbi Yasa. It was directed against the Braisa that Rabbi Hoishai taught. And you're going to see why here you have a big kasha. If the Braisa that Rabbi Hoishai taught, and I want you to know, guys, that Rabbi Hoishai was the teacher of Rabbi Yochanan. Braisas were not written in the Mishnah. There was always the possibility that a Braisa got corrupted, which means that there was a mistake in it. It was learned Baal Peh. And you have times in the Gemara that when someone quotes a Braisa, and an Amoida can say that Braisa cannot be correct. Doesn't work. And therefore it's incorrect. It's corrupted. There was a kasha of Rabbi Yochanan, but it was on the following Braisa taught by Rabbi Hoishai. And now you'll appreciate the kasha of Rabbi Yochanan. When it comes to other shiurim, I'll say it by heart. Let me go to Danny's share of Truma. The Torah doesn't say anything that implies explicitly that there's no minimum share by Truma. The Torah does not give a share. Let's go to the examples the Gemara just brought about Truma. The Torah doesn't say explicitly that the minimum amount of a sheretz, even less than the adosha, is matame. The Torah doesn't say that. The Torah doesn't say that less than a kazais explicitly is matame. The Torah doesn't say it. We don't know how much is needed. So there, even if you're not going to go with Rabbi Yochanan, that all of the shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Sinai, even if they're coming from the Chachamim, when the Chachamim give a shir, they're not going against something that's explicitly written by the Torah. The Torah didn't say what it is. They didn't say, and they're giving you, no, let me tell you what it is. Masha'enkin, if there is a scenario where the Torah is telling you befedish that the minimum amount is enough, if the Torah writes that befedish, Rabbi Yochanan is saying the Chachamim don't have the right to undo that by giving a share. I'll give you a mashal. Give you a great mashal. We don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. So there's a classic question. Classic question is that since the Chachamim made a takana that you cannot play musical instruments on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, so if the Chachamim, so you should never blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah because it's a musical instrument. This is a classic question. A classic answer is it's not called a musical instrument. Another classic answer is the Chachamim don't have the koyach to go against what's written in the Torah. They can limit. So Torah says you blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, you got to blow it on Rosh Hashanah. For them to say that if it falls on Shabbos, you don't blow Gzeira D'Rabba, that's something that they have the koyach to do. Even though we know that the Chachamim Yeshlam koyach b'yad Chachamim la'akar davar min ha'Torah b'sheva al tasa, but they don't do that. They don't go ahead and uproot something. So when it comes to shiurim, that's the crux of the Gemara. When the Torah is vague, even if you won't hold like Rabbi Yochanan, you'll hold that some shiurim came with the Rabbanan, we have no problem with that. The Torah was vague, and the Chachamim say it has to be that amount. Masha'enkein, if, according to Rabbi Oisha, there's a Braisa that insists that the way you interpret a word in the Torah, which you happen to have in this week's Parshas Mishpatim, when the Torah says the words V'loy Yero Panay Reikam, so there's a Braisa that says, don't appear, it's a Gavaldik Braisa, empty-handed. Let me ask you, what is needed for you not to be empty-handed? Anything. Because anything is not empty. Not empty. I'm not saying this misvara. If that would be a svara, it wouldn't bother me that it wouldn't bother Rabbi Yochanan that the Chachamim say it has to have one ma, two ma. But if there is a brisa that's telling you that the taich of the pasuk of Allah yero panei reikim, if this is what God means, don't come empty means just don't come empty. If there is anything, it's not empty. Anything is not empty anymore. It's not empty. If this is what it means, then the Chachamim don't have the koyach to say you have to bring one ma, two ma. That's a good statement. Let's read it inside. Rabbi by Peah, the Torah doesn't say a word that explicitly implies anything. The Torah just doesn't say. Leave. It doesn't say. So again, when the Torah says something stam, for the Chachamim later, even if it's not halacha l'moshe misinek, to say, the way we're going to fulfill this is by bringing a 60th. Rabbi Yochanan is not bothered. And Rabbi Yassi didn't have a limud. Rabbi Yassi just had a brisa. Re'iyah kolshu. And the shiurim is midrabanan. Rabbi Yochanan had no problem with that. Rabbi Yochanan's question was against his teacher's brisa. The brisa, according to him, said, it's getting late, that lo yero panei reikom, and the taich of reikom means empty. What stops? What's the enemy of nothing? Anything. That's the meaning of the pasuk. Afilu kol shuhu. And then the brisa, according to Rabbi Shai, went on to say, but chachamim hem shu amru ma kesef shtei kesef. Now you have to know again the girsa. On that, Rabbi Yochanan had a kasha. The kashya, I'm reading the girsa in the Pnei Moshe. The kashya mindu smach lidvar Torah chachamim shu amru ma kesef shtei kesef. That cannot be. That cannot be. In other words, if the Torah is writing clearly, the only thing God says I care about, don't show up empty-handed, meaning come with anything. Anything is good. Someone tells you that. I need recognition. Anything. And you give anything. The Chachamim cannot say it's not enough. That was his kash. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan is telling his teacher, your brisa is corrupted. It's wrong. There's no such a brisa. Because, really, it's minat midvar Torah. No, it comes out that there was a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and his teacher. It comes out, right? That Rabbi Yochanan is insisting it's halacha l'moshe misinai. We'll call that a doiraisa, dvar Torah. And there is a Tana of Rabbi Oshia that says, no, that the ma and the two ma is midrabanan. However, says the Gemara, Am Rabbi Yossi berabun, Rabbi Yochanan kidate, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, as we quoted in the Rashavilyo, as we have in the Eruvin and Sukkah and Bavli, Kol Hashiyurim halacha l'moshe misinai. And to be consistent with Kol Hashiyurim, indeed Rabbi Yochanan holds that do Amar here. Therefore, he says here that Ma'al Kesef and the Shtei Kesef is Dvar Torah. It has to be halacha l'moshe misinai. Turning to Dav Gimel Amud Beis. However, Rabbi Oshia kidate, initially at least, that Rabbi Yoshia Amar, that ha'oichel isur bisman hazeh. This is amazing. If a person eats chaylev, guys, treif doesn't demand the carbon, because treif is what we call treif, right? Or nevela is a lav for which a person is chayv malchus, but you're not chayv achatas. Masha'enken, if a person, God forbid, eats chaylev, since it's an isur kodesh b'mezid, so therefore, if a person eats chaylev, which was something that was relatively common, it was possible. B'shoigeg, because the shuman and the chaylev, and you had the menaker, and he didn't know what he was doing, and then you chayva carbon chatas. In the times of Chazal, especially in the times of the Tanoim, Rabbi Oshia was at the end of that era. Right, Rabbi Yochanan was in the beginning of the Amoraim. That means Rabbi Oshia is Tani Rabbi Oshia, Chi Rabbi Oshia, the end, Mamish Talmidim of Rabbi, but that's already the border between Tanoim and Amoraim, which is 200 years or less from Churban Abayis. If they did something that they felt they're chayv to bring a carbon chatas, they would write it in their notebook, because they believe that Mashiach is coming any moment. They believe that we have an obligation to build a mizbeach. According to most, they built a mizbeach after Churban Abayis, as we spoke that on Masechtas Pesachim. So they would write that when the mizbeach is going to be built, we have to bring a carbon chatas. So says Rabbi Shia that if someone eats a davar ha'asr that's mechayv chatas bisman hazeh, don't just write to remind myself I'm chayv. Today is what's today? Chav ches, right? Chav ches shvat. Chayv chatas. Don't do that. It's not enough. Write how much of the chaylev you ate. Sarach lirishem olav es hashiyurim. Why do you have to write down the quantity that you ate? Listen to his logic. Because Shem or Yamoid based in Acher could be that together with the building of the Mizbeach, together with the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, we're going to have the resuscitation of the Sanhedrin. They're going to go together and they're going to reevaluate. They're going to revisit many halachas. Maybe the Yeshana all of us Hashiyurim. Maybe they're going to change the Shiyurim. Maybe they're going to say, Danny, that what we call a kazayis, they're going to come to the conclusion that our kazayis, the kazayis of the Chazon Ish, is like a watermelon already. You understand? They're going to say that you guys are crazy. Your kazayis is much smaller. And therefore, a person might not think they're chayiv now because today the minimum is 1 ounce. Maybe they're going to come and say, no, kazayis is, what I'm saying is wrong. They're going to say that you're chayiv for a half a kazayis. Scratch what I said. They're going to say that we have now the share of a kazayis. Maybe they're going to say the share is less than a kazayis. And then you'll be chayiv, even though you don't think so. So write down the shiyurim because maybe Beis Din is going to make new shiyurim. And and now you have to know how much was my share included in the new share or excluded from the new share. Huh? It can go in either direction also. So maybe they're going to say you're only chayiv if you eat a kibetza. Or kikregeres, and therefore, even though you thought you chayiv chatas, right? You ate a kazayis because maybe you won't be chayiv. This is amazing. There's so many amazing things to this. So first of all, I want to say like this. So the Gemara is coming to the point that if Rabbi Oishaya, I know you should be calling him Oishaya, so Oishaya, if the Rebbe of Rabbi Yochanan, if he would have held that Shiurim is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, the Sanhedrin don't have the power to undo a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. They can only change a midrabanan. The fact that it's subject, perhaps, to change is a raya that he doesn't agree with the student Rabbi Yochanan. He doesn't know that all the shiurim is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So l'chu'ura, there's a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan b'shai. Now hold on. The amazing point is like this. One can argue, David, is very deep. Let's say that he's right, Rabbi Shai, and the shiurim are not all halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And maybe the Sanhedrin will change it. Let's go with Danny. That right now, if a person edach, kezayis, chelav, b'shoigeg, the chayiv chatas. What happens if they're going to say, no, to be chayiv chatas and kodesh, you have to have a kibbutz? So what? When did the guy eat it? When did the person eat it? He ate it prior to that change. Like what? Who cares that they all change it later? When are you chayiv chatas? When you sin? When you sin. When he sinned, there was a sin. That's machayiv chatas. So you see over here something very deep. I was thinking. So in other words, you see from our approach that it's not pshat, you're chayiv, you can't bring it. That if you don't have the ability to bring it, you're not fully chayiv yet. L'mashal. Again, I think that's a good mashal. That again has to do with amen, mila, tefillah, havas karban. When there's no mizbeach, there's no havas karban. So the question is, what's going to happen when Mashiach will come? All of the Gadim have to bring a karban, and we paskin they won't have to, because it's not that they're chayiv. They just if they're chayiv and they didn't do it, like you owe money, so now pay up. I couldn't pay. I had no money. Now I have money. Now I can pay up. If it's not shayich, you're not even really chayiv yet. Perhaps. I'm just pointing this out. Like, so what? It's going to change. Is that ayah that if it's going to change, it's going to change. I sinned bisman hagolos. It's going to change. Coming back over here, the Gemara says, Amri, I want you to know that chazar bei Rabbi Yochanan min hadam. That you should know that there's actually, it's not so clear. It's not so clear whether Rabbi Yochanan stood his ground regarding his initial statement. Don't forget that Rabbi Oishia is his teacher. Because if he was arguing with Rabbi Yosef, it's less problematic. But the Gemara is saying that since, that's what the Rashid says, that's where I got it from, that since Rabbi Oishia was his Rebbe, even though he had a kasha on his Rebbe, he was mekabel the words of his Rebbe. He was mekabel the words of his Rebbe. And according to this, Danny, imagine, even Rabbi Yochanan holds now that Var Torah, based on the pasuk v'lo yero upon Rekam, your carbon can be of the minimum amount. Now, all of that comes back to our Mishnah. According to this, we are taking away the whole beginning of the Gemara. So when it says in the Mishnah that we say every morning, Ra'ayan, even according to Rabbi Yechanan, can refer to the carbon. Because Dvar Torah, now if he changed his mind, any amount. However, I want you to know that Rabbi Yoina and Rabbi Yosi, Tarvayon, they are of the opinion that Rabbi Yechanan did not take away his original opinion. His Rebbe came with a brisa. He told him the brisa must be corrupted, and furthermore, so Rabbi Yoina and Rabbi Yosi, it's not only they had a tradition that he didn't change his mind. No, they had a source. The Amar Rebbe Law. Now, who's Rebbe Law? What kind of name is that? So, just like we mentioned many times that in the Yerushalmi you're missing an aleph, you're many times missing an ayin. So it's Rabbi Law. You understand? The Amar Rabbi Law in the name of Rav Ami that is Palgun Chizkiya ve Rabbi Yechanan. Chizkiya is the one that says Adam Chaylik as Chayvasei l'shtei behemais. You have to bring an animal that has tumah. Right? Let's go. Whether it's halacha l'mishmesine, whether it's the rabbanon, what happens if, guys, I'm not bringing one animal that's worth 2 ma? I want to bring 2 animals. Each one is worth 1 ma. Chizkiya says you can do it. Rabbi Yechanan says no. Ein adam chelik es chavas l'shtei behemas. Elo tzarich sheyeh biyadeh shtei kesef v'chalachas v'achas. You want to bring more than one gesund to hate, but each one has to have 2 ma. So what's the raya? The raya is like this. Let's use the words gavra and chepza. The Raisa, the Rabbanan, that's the Nesiris. That any Raisa is on the Chetza. The Rabbanan is on the Gavra. If Rabbi Yechanan, according to this first version, was Choyzer because of his Rebbe Rabbi Yoshe, because of the Braisa, and he were to hold that Dvar Torah you can bring the minimum amount, even though everyone holds L'Bei Silo, with the Rabbanan, the Chagiga has to have Shtei Kesef, but that will be a din on the Gavra. Let's go. That Rabbanan is, I have to bring Chagiga and the value of 2 Kesef. Why would it bother Rabbi Yechanan if each animal only is worth 1 ma'ah? So what? I brought Chagiga of 2 ma'ah, which is the reason why Chizkiya Taka holds that you don't have to bring 1 animal of 2 ma'ah. If you want to bring 2 animals, each one can be half the value because the Gavra fulfilled the minimum of 2 ma'ah. Why would Rabbi Yechanan argue with that? It must be because Rabbi Yechanan did not change his mind. Rabbi Yechanan holds that Dvar Torah, he stays with that. This shir, like all the other shiurim, that halacha l'Moshe Sinai, the chagiga has to have that minimum amount of tumah. And the Torah is not just speaking about the gavra respecting the mitzvah by spending more money on it. No, the animal itself has to have tumah, and therefore you can't bring 2 animals, 1 ma and 1 ma, 1 and 1 equals 2. No, it doesn't. The chefza of the animal has to be of tumah, because if God, it makes sense. If God says, you want to bring a gift. Your wife wants a diamond ring. Your wife wants a carat diamond ring. She wants a 2-carat ring. So you tell her, I'll buy you 1 and 1. Try that out. All right, really, I wanted to go on, but it's okay. Tomorrow's daf was also small. But that whole intro that we gave at the end, and again, called element, that's going to be the next topic, which will be mamish fascinating. Continue.